Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of Soccer Over There. So many of you tuned in last week as we went absolutely bonkers with the combined Super Show. But just to let everybody know, this is going to be a more transfer-centric episode because we're getting closer to the end of January, and that means that everyone starts losing their minds in general regarding transfers. I know Atlanta United faithful are trying to find every way possible to navigate how we can get 18 DPs on the field at one time. But we will get to that in a little bit. But first of all, I have to say that I am joined by my esteemed colleagues as normal. That would be the Godfather himself, Mr. Jason Longshore. Jason, how are you, sir?
What's up? I'm doing good. What about you?
Just dandy, thank you. And also the mouth of the South, the man who is all things Southeastern sports, Mr. John Nelson himself. Mr. Nelson, are you out there? And if so, how are you, sir?
Present and accounted for, sir, and I'm still picking up tennis balls.
There we go. Actually, before we get into the transfer world, I want to hear this because when you first pitched this idea to me, I didn't look it up. I didn't want to see anything. It's almost like the most interesting man in the world commercials. I want to know nothing about the guy because it's just so entertaining right off the cuff. I feel the same way about this. There's protests and tennis balls. Please, Mr. Nelson, tell us more.
All right. Well, as of 12 days ago, Bolton Wanderers were going to be served with two wind-up petitions from Her Majesty's version of the IRS, one having to do with the hotel and one having to do with the team.
Hold on. Wind-up petition, explain.
I guess the best way to phrase a winding up petition is it's like, dude, you got a tax bill due and you better pay it like pretty darn soon.
Got it.
So you got two tax bills, one on your hotel that you own and one on the team itself. And Her Majesty's secret IRS, which isn't so secret, was going to serve them up 12 days ago. About 2 years ago, Ken Anderson is the guy who is now chairman of Bolton, and he bought 95% of the team. First year that he owned them, they came out of League One, got back into the championship. Now this year, obviously with financing being a bit of an issue, Bolton is in the drop zone. They are currently 4 points ahead of Kate Riley's favored Ipswich bunch, 1 point behind Reading. So basically they're next to last in the table in the championship. Fans are not happy with how Ken Anderson has been running the club or not running the club. And so today there was an organized protest in the downpour at University of Bolton Stadium that circled the stadium before the fans made their way into the stadium for the game against West Brom, which was Monday Night Football. And West Brom, coming into the match, was top five, tied with Middlesbrough in points at 47, but they were in fourth place going in. So they're in pretty decent shape to be in the playoff to get promoted back to the Premier League. Most high-powered offense in the Premier League. West Brom would win the match 2-0, and that would take them third in the table on goal difference. But somehow, and we all know how resourceful fans can be when they're mad, the game was delayed a handful of minutes because fans had thrown tennis balls onto the pitch at University of Bolton as a protest for their chairman who wasn't really there, but they did hold up signs that said Anderson out and drew devil's horns on all of the signs and things like that. So it was an ugly scene at Bolton for one of the storied clubs in all of English football. They lose 2-0. They're still next to last in the table. Anderson has said that he wants to sell. He's just trying to find the right guy to sell to or the right group to sell to, and that was the excuse that was given as to why he wasn't at the match today, is that he was, quote unquote, overseas talking to a prospective owner. So it's a mess for a storied club right now that included protests in the rain and throwing tennis balls onto the pitch. And for those of us that tried to watch the beginning of the match on ESPN Plus, there were the screen that came up at 2:55 Eastern time said technical difficulties. Please stand by. And I don't know if that was because they didn't want the international feed to show the tennis balls being thrown onto the pitch as the players were coming on. But suffice to say, the game started about 5 minutes late.
Good times.
Tennis balls, protests, Bolton Wanderers. Not a pretty scene.
That's the stuff they got to show, though. They have to show the tennis balls being launched onto the field because, in my mind, it's far better that than, beer bottles here in the U.S. or anything else. I mean, to me, that's just that's the most English protest I can think of is launching tennis balls onto the field.
And I don't know the significance of it. I just, maybe it's something that you could smuggle into the stadium that you could just throw. I mean, it wasn't like when I was in school, and once again, the generational difference of the various hosts across the SDH platform will come to the fore here. But how many of us remember Dwayne Shinsis?
Vaguely, yeah.
Shinsis allegedly either roughed up and or held up a pizza delivery guy in Gainesville one night as he wanted to have some pies. So, of course, the next time that Florida came to Florida State University and played in Tallahassee, suffice to say that there were pizza boxes thrown from the student section onto the pit, onto the court. And there were tennis balls thrown there, too, because he apparently took a tennis racket to a side view mirror of a car in another outburst.
All right.
Tennis balls and pizza boxes. Very popular.
Balls and pizza boxes. Well, Ronaldo, in more news before we get to the transfer world, will be facing his own bit of protest from the Spanish tax courts because he will be in Madrid on trial for tax evasion. Mr. Ronaldo, who has his list of legal challenges growing by the minute, from tax evasion to sexual assault on the far more serious side. But this is something where, yet again, superstars in Spain seem to have run-ins with the tax man. So from England to Spain, we are now covering all of your tax issues on the secret 15th hour of soccer over there. So
taxes down here.
That's taxes
over
down
there.
Here. That's right.
That's the only one. We do that one in April, right?
Yeah, it's a mini series.
Yeah, we'll make sure we have that all lined up for you before you go to H&R Block or your Tax Liberty or Liberty Tax, whoever else, whichever one has the best dancing character outside of their establishment. Of course, that's the one you go to.
Of course.
And Ronaldo probably should have gone there before he started getting hit up by Spanish version of IRS. Okay, so enough with that mess. Let's get into the transfers where everyone from Serie A to the Premier League will be staring intently at the feeds tomorrow, where one Mr. Gonzalo Higuain is expected to take his medical at Chelsea, but that is pending, mind you, transfer of Krzysztof Piątek from Genoa to Milan. This is one that has been in the works for a while now. They've agreed to personal terms. They've agreed to a transfer, which will be around 35 million euro. And they claim, quote unquote, a couple of details are holding this up. I'm going to guess it's probably a sell-on fee or some bonus structure or extra payments that are going to be contingent upon whether or not Milan maintains its place in the top four, which, shocking and amazing enough, they were able to do thanks to Borini. Gennaro Gattuso is proving me wrong. Guys, how many times have I called for Gattuso's head? And
sometimes it may be good.
Sometimes it may be edited for the children. But yes, Gattuso's doing his job. I can't yell at the guy too much, but Piątek would be an absolute game changer. And for people who are Chelsea fans out there, you have to say, I don't know if this is the best move in the world for Higuain. I don't know if it's the best move for Chelsea. This really is starting to feel to me, guys, like in the NBA, whenever you have a player with a really bad contract, I'm thinking Carmelo Anthony, where you're getting diminishing returns, but you can't move the money, so you have to set up multi-team deals in order to get it all worked out. That's exactly how this is feeling, because Higuain will be moving to Chelsea on a loan with an obligation for another loan, at which point They're going to try to figure out if they're going to buy him, but he's already 31 years old. And the guy, you're talking about somebody right now who's tied 14th in Serie A in scoring, in Gonzalo Higuain. And you think he's going to do any better in the Premier League? There's no way in the world this works out well for Chelsea. I don't care about the relationship with Sarri before. He's a 31-year-old diminishing striker.
Yeah, but they don't have a striker. I mean, they don't. They're playing Eden Hazard as a forward, and that's not working for anybody. I just saw a quote from Hazard. He said, "I didn't just frustrate Conte. In my career, I frustrated all my managers, and now I'm frustrating Sarri. I frustrated Mourinho. They all think you need to score more, do such and such more. I'll also frustrate the next manager I have." Maybe he won't frustrate Sarri so much if he's back out wide? Maybe?
Perhaps. But there's more things that are going to be frustrating. There's more to that frustration side than just his play. I mean, he has to be honest with himself for a minute and say, okay, either I'm going to Real Madrid or I'm staying and re-signing at Chelsea. And that's half of the frustration, is that you have a superstar mega talent who 1 minute says, oh, I love Chelsea. I want to see what I can win here. And then in the next minute, oh, but it's always been my dream to play for Real Madrid. So part of that frustration, Eden Hazard, put on your big boy pants, is to make big boy decisions and say, okay, here's what I'm doing with my life next. So yes, his role as a player must be defined and probably redefined with the addition of a legitimate striker. But at the same time, he has to take some ownership here and make himself known to the world. Here's my plans, and here's what I'm going to do.
It's going to be interesting. I mean, Chelsea's 3 points clear in fourth right now of Arsenal. Do you think they hold on to that?
I think Higuain will help hold on to that. I don't know if he's going to be the earth-shaking option that they need. I think that they need a striker. If I'm Chelsea, and I know this goes against everything Chelsea, I would hit up Juve and say, hey, Moise Kean, what's it going to take to get him over? Because to me, he's a talent who absolutely needs minutes. He's somebody you could get for far less than you can get for Gonzalo Higuain. And he's somebody that Sarri could slot in immediately and probably get better results and will probably be a better fit for the Premier League. Higuain has played all over the place, but I don't know if he's going to be the person who will help Chelsea gain ground. He'll probably help them hold ground, though. So there is that.
What about, okay, so Chelsea might hold off Arsenal, but what about Ole Gunnar Solskjaer's Manchester United?
They're doing okay.
Well, yeah, they're doing okay, but I think if anything, Arsenal is Arsenal's biggest problem. Arsenal's back line. And the fact that they claim they're not going to be spending any damn money tells me that they are probably not destined for any sort of Champions League ranking at the end. I'm talking about anywhere from 1 through 4, 1 through 6 even, if they keep acting up the way they are, especially with the fact that you have an owner who could easily dump and invest cash and still maintain profitability, but he won't. I think Man United will absolutely have a chance to climb up. Chelsea has to hold off at 4. And let's also talk about what's going to happen with Spurs, who they claim they're not going to spend any money. They have injuries mounting up and turning players off at God knows where, but they're not going to spend any money either. So you're talking about the third and fourth position in the Premier League now up for grabs. So Man United, talking about the turnaround, man. Ole Gunnar's making things happen.
How is he not hired on a permanent yet?
Because you can't think just with your heart in this moment. I know that it seems like I get it. I'm the unpopular guy in the room right now, but you have to start seeing this out, because you can't. And everyone chill for a minute when I say this. You can't throw good money after bad, right? You can't do it. Just sit back, hold off for a minute. I don't think he's just going to up and go, and I don't think he's the guy because of his legacy with Man United who would bend them over the barrel. But I do think you give him the rest of the season to see if he can maintain top 6. If he can maintain top 6 with that roster, how could you not? Then by all means, sign him. If he gets you into the top 4 at the end of the season, amen, sign him. But if you sign him now and there's a loss in form and they drop down to like 8, is that still a good hire?
For them, yeah.
Well, I mean, right now, it's the group of 6 is going to be the group of 6 unless Watford and Wolves do something, and Leicester and West Ham. I mean, right now you've got those 4 teams at 33, separated by 2 points. It's an 11-point gap. That is a chasm with 15 matches to go for Watford or anybody to catch up with Manchester United. So I think the top 6 are the top 6, and the next go round is Chelsea, Bournemouth, Arsenal, Cardiff, Manchester United, Burnley. So I don't think that anything's going to change after match week 24 either. And that gets you to the window.
I think you're at a point with Manchester United where you need to make a statement about who the club is. And that's what they've lost. I think if you go back to Sir Alex Ferguson walking away and what's happened since, you've watched a club that had a clear identity and who they were, throw that into the trash, and then throw that into the trash compactor, and then lose it on the highway. It's a mess. And they need, I think, as much as they need to hire the right guy, they've tried that, now 1, 2, 3 times, and they've gotten nowhere except moving backwards. I think going back to somebody that is part of that glory period and is someone who understands what it's supposed to mean to be part of Manchester United, I think that is really, really important here. And he's had the start, and it seems like every week it's, yeah, but they haven't played anybody. Okay, well, then they play somebody and they get a result. Well, he hasn't done it long enough. I think you're at a point where you need to make that statement and need to show some stability about where this club is going, and hopefully in a positive direction. I would do it ahead of the window. I don't know if they're looking. I don't know if they're planning on trying to do anything in the window. If they're not, then it's not as much of a rush. If they are, I would have done it by now to make that statement of, yeah, if you want to come here, this is going to be your guy.
I'm with you on that. Again, I'm just saying that for a team that has had as many issues where they felt like they had to rush and get the right guy and it fell apart. Yes, there's a tremendous gap between Man United and Watford. Completely taking that into account, I have no problem saying that if I'm Man United, Ole, love you. Let's see how it goes to the end of the season. Because we have to watch how this locker room reacts as well. There are volatile personalities inside that locker room. And that was part, of course, Mourinho played a tremendous role in that, his own downfall. But the strength of that locker room, right, it has to be monitored. We have to keep an eye on it. And if he can keep that locker room together to the end of the season, by all means, sign your man. I'm not saying that we have to take into account, he hasn't played anyone or he hasn't done this. The turnaround's been incredible, but I want to make sure that it's sustainable, and I want to make sure that it's something that isn't just going to fizzle out and go kaput. And then if I'm Man United, now I have to go and pay another manager not to work here. So just throwing that out there. I know I obviously I am not in the majority here. I await your hate mail, Manchester United.
I think it's time, though. I mean, I'm with you, and I would have been with you on that a month ago, a couple weeks ago. I think it's time. I think he's made his statement. I think you can move forward here and feel pretty good about it. I just wonder if there's any effect on the transfer window, since that's the big topic right now, is that question, since he's on an interim basis, is that going to affect anything that Manchester United might be wanting to do in the window? I don't know really if they even know what they want to do in this window. It might not be anything. It might just be get through it and get to the summer and then figure out where we're at then.
Yeah, I think to your point, with if you watch outbound transfers more than inbound transfers, I think that would probably give us a better clue as to where Man United feels about Ole. If they get rid of a couple of key guys or people, like if they ship Fulani out and they say, okay, well, we're not going to really bring anyone else. We're going to see what Ole can do with what we have. Ship a couple of people out. Maybe they say, all right, well, we're taking his philosophy under advisement and we're moving forward with him. To me, that would be the key indicator is this window, who goes rather than who comes in. Because I think Man United is a big enough club that if they call you up, you're probably going to end up going no matter who's in charge.
The Mirror says that the $500 million investment that has been made in players is what Ole is stuck with, barring a long-term injury over the new period. Apparently, the front office believes that Jose Mourinho failed to get the most out of a squad that invested £216 million in Paul Pogba, Romelu Lukaku, and Fred.
Yeah, that's a metric kind of cash you have to account for. And maybe it does. Maybe you guys have convinced me. If you're looking at $500 million thrown down the drain, and maybe it does make more sense just to keep them because at the end of the day, throwing that money out would probably be cheaper just to sign them to a 3 or 4 year deal and see what you can get rather than going out and hiring a Zidane or the next insert big name manager X here for whatever you can get for him, and then 3 years after that pay him not to coach. So it'd probably be cheaper to keep Ole and see what you get. All right, you convinced me. Sold. Congratulations. I'm going to go and hide my head in shame now.
Ding, 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 ding.
I failed my family. I have failed my son. I'm sorry, Jackie Fresh. I have not done well by you today. Okay, so let's move on to the weirdest transfer that I've seen in some time, and that is Kevin Prince Boateng leaving Sassuolo for Barcelona. This is something like straight out of FIFA 19, like whenever you somehow manage to pull the wool over some team's eyes that would never happen in real life. But he's keep in mind he's 31 years old, 29th in scoring in Serie A. But he used to play at Las Palmas. He's going on loan with a $2 million fee and an $8 million option to buy. Sassuolo's in 12th, currently in Serie A. So this is something that, while it's great for the books, it's not really great for their position. But I think they've realized that, hey, we're not going to go any higher than we are right now. Guys, any thoughts on this? On Boateng? Because they were looking at Carlos Vela before.
Poor Carlos Vela. He almost had his chance.
I mean, you're talking about a guy who was 9th in MLS scoring. Yes, I get it. It's MLS. But at the same time, in my opinion, I think that Vela would probably be a far better option on a loan than Boateng. This tells me that it probably came down to more of a money issue than an actual player issue. Maybe LAFC or MLS didn't want to necessarily do the loan with options or obligations and so forth. They just probably wanted to be like, hey, give us our money, we'll let the player go. But to me, this is the one that's an absolute head scratcher. I simply do not understand this. And at the beginning of the season, Boateng was talking about how settled he was in Italy, how he and his family missed living in Italy, and the food and the culture, how comfortable he felt. And off to Barcelona he goes. But Barcelona's entire transfer strategy is sort of head scratching right now. When you talk about players who they just brought in, talking about trying to ship out, players are angry about the amount of playing time they're getting. If you're Boateng, I get that you want to have one last crack at the mega top tier, but a jersey to me is only so awesome. Playing time counts for something. So, in my opinion, this is just something that it's absolute head scratcher. Can make no justification about it. DiMarzio, when they were scratching their heads about it, all the major publications in Italy were scratching their heads about it. But hey, good for him. If you can get it, get it.
By most accounts I read, Vela was the backup plan, and there were a couple other plan A's. I think Boateng kind of popped up out of nowhere. but there were a couple different options, and Vela would have been the fallback. And I think I saw a quote from Vela where he said something about, it'd be great if it happens. If it doesn't, I'm happy here too. I don't think he was campaigning for it, or LAFC was trying to do it. I think it was something that in case of emergency, break glass is what you were looking at here. It's an interesting situation. I mean, if Boateng's on board with it as, hey, I'm the backup, I'm going to be an option off the bench, I might start a game here or there, and that's what he wants at this stage of his career, okay. That's fine. I mean, I think you have to go into it with that mindset, because if you go in thinking otherwise, you're going to be disappointed, because that's not what they were looking for in this role. It's not what they were looking for in this situation. So Barca's in a spot where, it's a weird year with Real Madrid's issues and what's going on in La Liga. So I'm curious to see how Barcelona does in the knockout stages of the Champions League. I think that's what is going to be the big tale for them.
Mm-hmm. No, completely agree with that. They are going to have to do a heavy amount of squad rotation. They have a comfortable lead. Atletico is sitting at 41 points in second compared to Barcelona's 46 at the top. Real Madrid's a dumpster fire year for them. They're in third place at 36 points. So
I mean, it's funny when third place is a dumpster fire, but it's truly a dumpster fire for Real Madrid.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know how anyone will be keeping their jobs at the end of this season. And at some point, you are going to have to move Sergio Ramos, because you have managers who will not come there because he has so much control over the locker room. And as long as he maintains that control over the locker room, it's going to be a toxic relationship. And Florentino Perez is the Henry VIII of team presidents. I mean, to me, Madrid is an unsustainable situation. I want to see what happens with them in the summer as far as the transfer window goes. It's going to be a matter of time before Neymar and Mbappe's name start circling around, depending on Paris Saint-Germain's financial fair play situation. But Madrid is a dumpster fire right now. You can't get around it. And at some point, just changing the manager is not going to do.
So here's my question, though.
Yeah.
Who in England is going to bring Sergio Ramos in? Because that's what's going to happen.
Oh, man. An English team that would bring in Sergio Ramos. I mean,
it can't be Liverpool.
Chelsea.
I mean, it wouldn't. Can you imagine that matchup, Liverpool versus whatever team brings in Sergio Ramos?
That's what I'm saying.
That would be dynamite. Look, Chelsea can afford it. Arsenal clearly can't.
Arsenal doesn't want to.
I mean, they could use him. If anybody needs some steel on the spine on defense, it would be Arsenal. But I mean, if I'm Sergio Ramos, maybe I start calling my boy David Beckham up saying, hey, let's start talking Turkey for a move to MLS.
Ooh.
I know I don't think he's necessarily there, but good-looking guy. He's a character. People either love him or hate him. He's very polarizing, which is great for your celebrity status. He's going to move the meter no matter what. But Sergio Ramos in Miami, that would be an instant hit in my mind.
Sergio Ramos loose on South Beach.
There you go.
Yeah. Can you imagine him in that black and pink kit, South Beach? The commercials write themselves. I'm going to start scripting commercials for this tonight. Anybody at MLS headquarters or with the Moss brothers or Mr. Beckham would like to call me, I'm happy to discuss rates and fees. They will be very, very reasonable. But I don't know if there's a market for him anymore at the top tier. Yes, he's a legend. Yes, he has done everything there is to do. But I just don't know if there's a team out there, especially with financial fair play, that's ready to take that kind of gamble on a player at his age. MLS, line one, he could still do some really good things here. Let's take a quick commercial break if we can, and then come back and hit up some of the MLS transfer rumors. Guys, we will be hitting up both coasts, if we will. But it's Nick Leafy Soccer Over There with Jason Longshore, John Nelson. We will be right back.
The average time a resume spends on an HR manager's desk is 7 seconds, and most of them are tossed aside. Now imagine if one of those resumes belonged to Yasmin, who was
living in a shelter, juggling 3 jobs. I had to be resilient. That's something that you can't teach.
We rely so much on a resume, yet it could never tell the full story of someone who
had to be independent and take initiative. And that's how I handle every project I get.
Discover new ways to develop great talent at gradsoflife.org. Brought to you by Grads of Life and the Ad Council.
We know that every driver is different, and a one-size policy does not fit all. That's why Country Financial offers a variety of discounts, so you get the coverage you need and the savings you deserve. From good driver to good student, multi-policy to multi-car, we've got a discount to suit every driver. Call Jason Wright at 678-568-6871 today to see what you could save. On Facebook at Jason Wright Agency, or by phone at 678-568-6871. Discounts vary by state. Policies issued by Country Mutual Insurance Company, Country Preferred Insurance Company, or Country Casualty Insurance Company, Bloomington, Illinois.
Hey, hon, what you doing with your phone? Taking pictures?
No, I'm asking it questions.
Like what?
Hey, Bobo, do flowers have best friends?
I'm sorry. I'm afraid I don't know that.
Hey, follow me. I want to show you something. Look, flowers do have best friends.
Whoa.
Some answers can only be found in nature. Discover the unsearchable. Visit discovertheforest.org to find a trail near you. Brought to you by the United States Forest Service and the Ad Council.
Soccer Down Here is sponsored by Apolinski & Associates, LLC, personal injury lawyers with over 30 years of experience. Call Steve Apolinski at 518-350-4231 or email him at steve@aa-legal.com if you need help with a wrongful death or serious injury matter. Steve Apolinski is rated one of the top 100 trial attorneys in Georgia, recognized as Legal Elite by Georgia Trend magazine for being one of the most effective lawyers in Georgia.
All right, welcome back at Soccer Over There. We are getting into the transfers with MLS now. There's some stuff circling around. And yes, if you've paid any attention to social media, you know that Pity Martinez showed up at Atlanta's Hartsfield-Jackson Intergalactic Spaceport with very bleary eyes. The poor guy looked like he wanted no part of dealing with fans and a crowd, but he looked to be extraordinarily generous with his time. Signed pictures, got about 15 scarves draped around his neck, and he will probably be sleeping, I imagine, until tomorrow at about 3:45 for a quote-unquote media availability that they're going to have. His name is not mentioned, by the way. Throwing that out there. General media availability. But it moved from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. for all of you out there who are still concerned. But there's a couple of other rumors going around, and that is that Dario Benedetto with Boca Juniors could be on the move to the LA Galaxy, but they already have like 97 designated players, so I don't know how that's going to work. For those who have just started tuning in to Copa Libertadores this past year, you saw Benedetto launch some absolute rockets. He's an incredibly fun player to watch. He has a ridiculously 1980s movie villain tattoo on his neck. You know, he's like one of those guys you can just imagine him in a movie, the opposite of, you know, Sylvester Stallone going, "Where's my cocaine?" But, you know, he has that look about him. I think he would do really good things here in MLS. But, guys, this move I don't think is going to happen. I know that they have to figure out the Dos Santos brothers are going to be doing reggaeton. You know, you have
old school reggaeton.
I'm just saying. I mean, you
Not
have
Daddy Yankee.
No, but guys, I put this at about 15% probability of happening. Where would you put this particular transfer rumor? And is this worrying for you that GBS is trying to call in other designated players when he looks at this roster?
I mean, it makes sense, you know. Are you going to try to go get somebody that you know? Sure. I mean, that's normally how these things go. But how are you going to make it work? And even beyond the MLS roster rule part of it with designated players, take a step beyond that. How are you going to play Benedetto and Zlatan together? I don't see any way that works when you're already throwing Ola Kamara out wide. I don't get it. Now, if you're going to trade Ola Kamara, yeah, okay, that creates another opportunity. But Benedetto and Zlatan seem to be pretty much the same player at this point in terms of what they do. Like, I don't see Benedetto dropping into the midfield, not with his injury history. Zlatan, I mean, I guess you could play him underneath Benedetto and get him more involved and get more touches, but is he going to be effective there at this point of his career? I don't think so. So I don't think it makes much sense, but there's been a lot of talk about it. It's not something that's really gone away yet. So I don't know. I'm maybe thinking it's more than 15%, but I just don't know why they would necessarily do it with Zlatan there or how they're going to do it with the roster rules.
Because what makes the least amount of sense makes the most amount of sense. So
no, that doesn't make any sense.
That's my point.
No, what you said makes no sense. On top of the Galaxy doing this, now you're talking nonsense.
60% of the time, it works every time.
Yeah. 60% of the time, it's 100% success rate.
Okay, Yogi Berra.
Well, the question is, one, what is the probability that MLS moves to 4 DPs? And then...
Not yet.
They haven't already?
No, they have not. And I don't see it happening all of a sudden with a few days left in a window on players going out and a little over a month in the time before roster compliance. Maybe next season, but you also have to remember the flip side. You had a group of owners talking about wanting to go to 2. Yep. So I think the greater momentum in the league is to go the other way. But do you go to 4? Do you go to 5? I mean, what number makes sense? Like, I think you have to get the next CBA done before you think about any dramatic changes like that. And part of that CBA to me has to be now it's time to reconcile allocation money, targeted allocation money, salary cap. How can we streamline this a bit? No, hold on. We're not talking about that right now. That has zero to do with the roster side. I don't want to get it complicated. The CBA part, when it comes to rosters, you have to streamline it because right now it's borderline impossible to talk about what MLS teams are going to do in the window because we don't know. We don't know how you're going to deal with right now 4 designated players. You've got tweets from Doug at the AJC about he tweeted, learned today that an MLS team can pay for an entire transfer fee in first year, thereby reducing the total that is calculated into the DP charge in years 2 and on. And Paul Tenorio is like, well, now this gets complicated and budget implications versus how you pay for things because teams are going to want money up front. How does all this work? I don't know. And I don't know how to talk about it. And it's too complicated because in other American sports, what beyond playoffs and championships do people get riled up about talking about? Trade windows, trade deadlines, free agency. The NBA has just cornered the market on how to do this right now with the trade deadline and the opening of free agency being big deals on the NBA calendar now. Transfer windows should be that for MLS, but it's so hard to talk about. CBA time is the time to get the allocation money stuff and the cap streamlined so it's easier to explain. The designated player part will go along with that, and it's something to be talked about. Do you keep it at 3? Do you go to 4? Do you change the threshold? All that stuff is part of it. But you have to make it easier for people to understand. That should be the number one thing that comes out of the CBA. And then you can deal with all the other stuff like TV deals and charters and this and that and all that. But it has to be easier because right now you have 2 teams that have 4 designated players. We don't know exactly what options they have to get away from that outside of moving somebody from a slot. We don't know how teams can buy people down. We don't know which players are all bought down. We don't know how much is being used to buy them down. We don't know who has what under the cap. These are things that should be easier, and it needs to be sorted out so we can have a greater conversation about MLS's transfer window than we do right now.
So a question about Ezequiel Barco and Ezequiel Barco's salary to make Jason's head fully explode.
Let's do it.
Because he's under the age of 18, the only thing that's making him a DP right now is his transfer fee, correct? Theoretically?
No. And see, this is where it gets complicated. It shouldn't be. This is actually fairly easy. His cap hit is $150,000. That's because of being a young, extra young designated player.
Yes.
That's his cap hit. A normal designated player's cap hit is the max contract, which this year I think is $530,000. That is Joseph Martinez's cap hit, and you pay everything you want above that. Ezequiel Barco's cap hit is $150,000. They're paying him around $1.5 million a year.
Okay, there we go. All right.
Now the transfer fee factors into it too, but and this is where the tweet from Doug, and I think it's why Tenorio gave the this gets complicated response, because you can pay the transfer fee up front, and I think most teams doing business with an MLS team are going to say, I don't care how it's hitting your cap, you're cutting us a check right now because that's what we do. So that part is fine, but then how does it hit the cap? According to MLS experts for years and years, it's divided over the life of the initial contract. So if you pay $15 million in a transfer fee, you're paid 1.5 and it goes up, year after year. I'm assuming we don't know how much Barco's contract is for. We don't know how many years. So say it's 5 years. It's 1.5 plus per year for his salary. Then that $15 million divided over the 5 years, so it's an extra $3 million a year is what his number would be. So you can't buy that down to get him under a designated player threshold. Now, the one thing that is starting to come out of this conversation, because it's this tweet from Doug that hit it at 6:11 is making the rounds, and people are losing their minds all over the country right about now who get into designated players and cap hits and all that. I believe there could be some differences in how transfer fees are attributed to contracts for designated players and targeted allocation money players, which, again, just makes your head explode. And I don't even know how we have these conversations because we pretty much can't.
Yep. My head exploded through that entire mathematical exercise.
Mine did, and it has exploded on a daily basis during all of this. And there's no way to make it better until the rules are streamlined. And I understand why the rules are the way they are. I get how MLS has grown from a very closed shop, single entity situation to, okay, let's start to be more transparent. Okay, designated players are actually a thing now in the rules, not something that just happens, off the books, which is how it went for the first 10 years of the league. Now it's something we have to account for. Now it's something we can talk about. Okay, now we want to have more investment in the league. Let's create targeted allocation money and make that for a specific set of players, which was a great thing. It's improved the level of play in the league dramatically. It's been a great thing for the league. But, man, is it complicated to talk about. They have to figure out a way to streamline it. That's one of the biggest things MLS has to do from a media perspective.
Yeah, my head is still spinning on all of that.
It's tricky. And I mean, Nick, this is such a huge part of the conversation right now in England, in Italy, in Spain, in Germany, about the window and about what teams are going to do. We can have this conversation to a degree here about, this player would be a great fit for the roster. This player would work. They need a goalkeeper. They need a left back. But in terms of contracts and is this a realistic move or not, we're playing a guessing game most of the time.
And that's, what you're looking at when it comes to all of this stuff. It's trying to, you can sit there and throw numbers around, and then there's that second level of, okay, how much is a team willing to take a hit if it's a negative, a negative situation when it comes to the revenue, and what you think is going to continue to happen when it comes to the level of investment. Is it going to be this way consistently? Is it going to be just negative return? Are you looking to break even? Are you looking to come up with profit and reinvest? For me, that's the whole dynamic of all of this. And every single team is going to look at it differently, whether it's positive cash flow, break even, or negative cash flow. And a lot of folks just have to pay attention to it the entire time, because one team's approach is going to be different from another team's approach. But fiscal responsibility really is the first thing that I look at in these situations is, okay, what are you looking to accomplish here? Are you looking to invest in a player, have the player grow, and then transfer him off, take that money, reinvest, and so on, and not get into a negative cash flow situation and get yourself into a hole that creates problems like we had that we talked about at the very beginning of the show?
Yeah, it's baffling. Hopefully, MLS can streamline this so we can have this conversation here, because I think it's part of telling the story of the league and team and all that, and it's something that is a huge part of the conversation with all of our other leagues, and it's a huge part of all of the other soccer leagues around the world. I just want it to be a little easier to understand. Yeah. I mean, if people can explain the cap and all of that when it comes to the NBA, I would hope that you could figure it out for MLS with a little bit of help. It's just come on, please. I did find
Go
ahead.
No, I was just going to say, with the NBA though, you have the exceptions, the Larry Bird rule. You can do percentages up and over maximum salary. You have the max ideas, but at least where the NBA is concerned, because of all of the quirks that are introduced, like the Larry Bird rule, they at least lay it out for you to sit there and say, okay, if you want to do a trade, you have to do this, 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 and this, be within 10% of the math, and then they would have the math available for you. And it's just, at least the NBA, with all of its quirks, is attempting to explain it to the average fan to understand how a team can either be under the cap or be over the cap, knowing full well that there's going to be a luxury tax take.
Yeah, it's really weird. Just the whole thing has to be at least to that degree. Like, there are blogs when it comes to MLS or NBA free agency and trade deadlines and all that. I can find it pretty quickly with a couple Google searches, and I know the people to go look for their info. And I can see, all right, hey, the Hawks have this much room under the cap and this type of roster spot. Okay, this is what they could do. Same with the Falcons. I mean, you kind of know roughly, all right, they've got about $20 million under the cap to work with before they cut anybody. And if they cut this guy, it's going to affect this. Yeah, there's some work involved, but it's manageable. MLS, it's just completely unknown. So hopefully that changes. But guys, I did find the worst trade, and this is a trade because it happened here, in soccer history. It's amazing, and I'd completely forgotten about it, and I kicked myself for forgetting about it. So we have to go back to the North American Soccer League in 2014, and the Fort Lauderdale Strikers traded Walter Restrepo to the San Antonio Scorpions for a transfer fee. That's what it was announced as. Yeah, it sounds normal, right? Sounds like a normal situation. Here's what Fort Lauderdale got for transferring Restrepo to San Antonio. They received hotel and transportation arrangements for the club's trip to San Antonio on June 7th. So they got hotel reservations at the Crockett Hotel, which normally charged $169 a night for a room that could have 2 people in it. If you did 12 rooms, that's 24 people. Okay, that's normal. About $4,000. Transportation, I mean, a bus. I don't know what bus rental goes for the night, but $5,000. They got hotel rooms and a bus for a trip. That was the transfer.
Hey, Ernie Harwell got traded for a catcher for broadcaster.
Well, I mean, that's kind of weird, but this was
room and board,
hotel rooms for a trip.
Well, obviously that's not an Alifi setup at the hotel, because I can tell you that we managed to put about 15 people into a 2-bedroom cabin up in Blue Ridge, Georgia. There's a little tiny A-frame cabin, so it's too bad that I wasn't in charge of that deal, because I could have put that whole team in probably about 4 rooms and made it work. So I'm just throwing that out there. I'm sorry my call dropped earlier. I had a fail whale moment, so unfortunately it didn't work out so well. So I trust you guys covered my sadness in dealing with the Martio and working with all that. So.
All of it. We covered all of your sadness.
All the sadness.
Thanks.
Much like all the Lira, all the sadness.
All the sadness. So tomorrow, Joey Saputo is set to make a major announcement at 10 a.m., according to Jonathan Tannenwald. No idea what it is about. And guys, I mentioned it earlier in the show, Atlanta is also moving their media availability from 10 a.m. to 4 p.m. to, quote, major announcement. Your thoughts on what it could be?
I don't know. There's talk in Montreal about a new president of the club. I believe it is someone, and John as the resident host of Hockey Down Here, which airs at 2:35 a.m. every third Wednesday of the month. It's a guy associated with the Canadiens who I think has done some good business for the Montreal Canadiens.
Well, if the Canadiens don't win the Stanley Cup, it's always bad business. So depends on what you're looking. If you're talking about on ice, or if you're talking bottom line. And
no,
so
it's bottom line. It's bottom line business, because that's the only thing they have done well, if I remember correctly from listening last time to Hockey Down Here.
Yes, Molson family, all that kind of stuff. So if you don't want to lose $11 million a year, then maybe this is the guy if you're going to do something like this. But I have no clue what this could be about. I mean, we all know that Joey doesn't like to lose money. He's like the George Steinbrenner to me of MLS, and anything is possible. And I am prepared for anything short of him maybe signing David Villa.
Well, the speculation is Kevin Gilmore is going to succeed Joey Saputo as president of the Montreal Impact.
And if you guys are wondering why I'm bringing up MLS club business on soccer over there, and that is because that Saputo is also the president for Bologna over in Serie A, and that is a team that is in the red. So he has spent about $120 million in 4 years on that club. So it's going to be something interesting to see if he continues investing in soccer at all. If this is something, because if this is something where the dominoes start to fall and he moves on from Montreal, the Montreal Impact, could Bologna be next? And if Bologna gets into financial trouble, well, that's just another black eye for Serie A of yet another president who came in, dumped a wall of cash, couldn't make it sustainable, and then had to get out. So let's hope, for stability's sake, that Saputo stays invested in Serie A, and for MLS sake, that there's some stability with the Montreal Impact as well.
So he bought into Bologna. They were second division when he bought it in 2014. How, just, your understanding of Serie A, like, how would you say, okay, they got promoted the next year. That's a good situation. I think he did good there. But since then, I mean, is it just poorly run? Do they not have enough resources? Has it been a train wreck? Or is it just not that big of a club?
Well, Bologna at one point was a decent sized club, but Bologna right now, it's hard to do business in Serie A. And when you're talking about the TV deals and getting fans to come to the club and to come and show up to games and player investments, it's just not an easy business to be in. And I think it's one of those deals where, as many a team president has found out, if you are not lock, stock, and barrel supported by the local government, that it could be very problematic for you. And in Italy, it's very easy to throw good money after bad with bad stadium deals. And I'm not familiar if Bologna owns their stadium or not, but there are a lot of teams in Italy that do not own their stadiums. In those stadiums, in a lot of cases, they have to pay rent, and then they also have to make repairs on the stadium, some of which were built for or last renovated for the 90 World Cup. So when you're talking about stadiums that are that old and not necessarily owned by the team, they can become a money suck very quickly. And it's not like they're buying big name players, but I think the problem is they're also not shipping out big name players as well. There's no development strategy. You don't hear about a Piontek coming from Bologna and being signed by a Milan or a Juve or even a Fiorentina or anybody like that. It's just not there. It's just not in the headlines. So they may do some business shipping out players here or there, but there's not a tremendous amount of talent development going on. So it's very easy to lose your lunch in Serie A if you're not careful.
It's tricky for him. It looks like, from what I can tell quickly, bought the team in 2014. We don't know what he paid for it. They were second division. They got promoted to Serie A. There had to be some pretty heavy investment to go from Serie B to Serie A in a year.
Tremendous.
Yeah, that's a lot of money he's throwing in. You look up the stadium, the Stadio Renato Dell'Ara. It's built in 1920 or 25, opened in 27, hosted games at 2 World Cups, 1934 and 1990, renovated in 2015. That would have been right after he took over the team, probably as they were going into Serie A, would be my guess. That's another chunk of money. So he's put, a lot of money into this, and this is, by all accounts, a great stadium. I mean, what I'm reading here on Wikipedia, it's considered one of the best fields in Italy and Europe. It's great drainage, just great turf. The field is supposed to be great. It's 36,000 or 38,000 seats. Nice size.
Yep.
That's expensive to renovate a stadium, to buy a second division team, and then get them promoted. So on top of, he was the founding president of the Montreal Impact in 1993. Yeah, the Impact are one of the old school North American teams that are still kicking. The Saputo Group was the sole owner of the team. I think he's added some other investors when they went up to MLS, and I don't know if he's added more. He mentioned, was it last year that he said they were losing around 11 or 12 million a year with the Impact?
Yeah.
And that hit some shockwaves. But when you think about it, that's not a huge number in terms of the economics of MLS. Remember the numbers from Forbes, and these are estimates, but the valuations and the estimated expenditures and revenues year to year, you're talking about spending 40, 50, 60 million a year, somewhere in that range. And if you're losing 11, they sold Balou to Barcelona and made a pretty good chunk of change. And you're hearing the numbers that are being talked about for Miguel Almiron. They don't have a player that they could sell like that right now. But if you start to think about it that way, an $11 million loss in a year is not that much in the grand scheme of things. That can be flipped pretty fast in this league, in this type of market. And if it grows, I think you're in a great spot. I'm curious to see what this announcement is beyond just a new president. He's the founding president. He's been the face of the Montreal Impact pretty much from day one. He took them from an A-League team that was dominant. He pulled them out of the A-League for a year. They played a year of just indoor because the A-League was a constant mess. Then he pulled them out of that. They ended up doing the North American Soccer League for 2011 when it came back, before they went into MLS in 2012. a lot of money and time and energy he spent in the last, 10 years. He's taken 2 teams from the second division to the first in 2 different countries. Maybe he's just stepping back a little bit. Maybe he's got to deal with the Saputo Group other business, which I believe is cheese, by the way.
Right. Get in there with that. Get in there with that Saputo Dairy and Meats. Get in there.
You know, I mean, he's
the
also a member of
cheeses.
He's a member of the Italian Canadian Community Foundation of Quebec. I mean, he's got a lot of things going on.
Well, I think the first thing they can do is, as much as I love Pippo Inzaghi, he's not doing the job. He did a great job guiding Venezia FC from Serie C up to Serie B. Great job. Takes a lot of work to do that, but he's just not getting the job done in Serie A. So if Saputo stays, then I think that's going to be something he has to address immediately, whether or not you keep Inzaghi around, because if you can't sit at the bottom of the table and fall back into the melee of Serie B, because Serie B,
Right.
Say what you want about English Championship, it is so easy in Italy to go from the bottom of Serie A to bankrupt in no time flat. And when you lose that spot, that coveted Serie A spot, you may not get it back. Just look at Catania down in Sicily. They had Walter Mazzari as a coach. They were up in Serie A. They made their way to mid-table, and then they collapsed and fell apart. And they are, kicking around in like Serie B, Serie C now. They were playing Siracusa, which is my family's hometown. I think this is past weekend. So if this is something where if Saputo is going to stay, he's got to make some very careful decisions up next.
You hit on it too, real quick. That might be what's happening here. If he's passing the presidency of the Montreal Impact over to somebody else, I mean, he'll still be the owner and he'll still be there, but maybe he is focusing more on Bologna. Maybe he realizes that, I need to turn my attention here. Let's have this guy run Montreal right now, and let me try to fix Bologna and my investment there. Maybe that's it.
I would be all about that, because I would prefer for Bologna to stay in Serie A. They're an old name, that their name that needs to be up in Serie A and preferably back to some level of glory. I'll consider mid-table glory for them. As we move to finances, UEFA dropped their benchmarking report. And for those of you out there who are soccer finance nerds and really want to see the guts of the inner workings on TV deals, how that works, even all the way down to shirt sponsorships, this is where you can get all of that information from. And you can just go Google it. I don't have the link to drop on there. And I retweeted it earlier today. You can go find me on Nick Leafy, at Nick Leafy, and you can pull the report there. But they get such information as sports betting, gambling, shirt sponsors in almost half of the top divisions. That's 26 to 50. Increase in revenues with English clubs up 5 percentage points. Italy, Spain held steady. Germany dropped 1%. But TV contributions between 5 and 54% of club revenues, depending on the league. So in England, it was 54%, Spain 43%, Italy 49%. So if your TV deal is crap, Italy, and 49% of your team's revenue is coming from that, you got to get that deal together.
A little bit.
And net debt, and here's the thing, we always talk about financial fair play, and we hear all the teams complaining about how it's this cap that, when you drop a certain level and you don't get that Champions League money and that Europa League money, that you're destined for failure eternally, and how it's geared to protecting the big clubs. Well, congratulations, net debt has declined significantly over the past 10 years. And the clubs currently with the highest net debt, Manchester United with 459 million, Inter 438 million, Atleti 391 million, Juve 289 million, and AC Milan at 272 million. Now, you have to keep in mind that there's a lot that goes into that number, and it's not just they're spending out of control, but there's more to it, and they do a full breakdown on how you can work with the net debt numbers and, get a full grip on, okay, why is the amount so large for Manchester United? Or, why is Milan at 272 and so forth? It's an interesting report. I'm going to do a deep dive on it this week and pull some more stuff, and we'll probably do some hot drops on it.
I was about to say, maybe a hot drop?
Yes, and the Calciopoli scandal, that is going to be done. That is coming. But I want to make sure I do total justice on there. And sorry, Juve fans, I am not Serie A. I will not go and retroactively issue you the Serie A title that was given away because you screwed up. That's not my fault. Tell your people to not be trying to buy off referees, and maybe next time you can keep your title.
He's a Milan fan, folks.
So you're saying?
All I'm saying is for years, Serie A fans kept screaming that magical penalties would appear out of nowhere whenever Juve needed a goal. I'm just saying, it was out there, and when it all came to light, all of a sudden everybody went, aha, across Serie A because it's all proven true. So
you're saying they're like the Patriots?
Yes. Yeah. I have no problem saying that. They are the Patriots of Serie A. And, what they're doing now, that's not Calciopoli. What this is now is an amazing investment strategy in players, really managing how, when and how they do contract extensions, who they let go, even if they're club legends. This is all them right now. This is not Calciopoli. But the Calciopoli scandal really opens up how dirty Serie A was for a little while. So it's going to be a pretty interesting thing. I've covered it before, but I have no trouble at all covering it again for all of you. We are 7 minutes in stoppage time. That is way too long. Guys, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you so much for hanging with us. Listen for the hot drops. They'll be coming soon. As always, it is Nick Alifi, the Garlic Bread Warlord. You could find me at Nick Alifi on the Twitters or at Sock over there. If you don't want to hear my movie reviews and or weird cybersecurity / defense / whatever, my nerd content. But guys, where can they find you and what will you be up to? Please plug yourselves accordingly.
Soccer Down here tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock a.m. It's Tuesday Thoughts, so if you have thoughts, you can tweet them at us, and we will talk about them on the show. Follow at Soccer Down here. Follow me at Longshoe. And next thing for me over on the radio side is hit at 1 o'clock with Rick and John on 92.9 The Game. 1 on Wednesday, and then stoppage time on the 92.9 The Game Facebook page at 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
All right. John.
Le Journal de Montréal, Dave Levesque, developing story. He says they are announcing Kevin Gilmore will become the club's president, succeeding Joey Saputo, who remains the owner. Gilmore had been an external consultant for MLS, for the MLS team for a few weeks, and their relationship was well developed. More on that as it goes. We'll talk about that in the morning. It is me at OSG Nelson on the Twitters. And don't forget to download the Soccer Down Here app, iOS and Android. So that way you know when something's going on. If it's a hot drop, if it's a Soccer Down Here episode, if it's a 1v1 interview that we do with a newsmaker in the region. So it's free. So just about the download space on your phone. iOS and Android, download the Soccer Down Here app. And for those that want to download stuff and find out about what OSG Sports thinks about college football and lacrosse and wrestling and all the other sports that we promote here, thanks to our friends at barnburner.ca, download the OSG Sports app as well.
Don't forget about Hockey Down Here, 2:35 a.m. every third Wednesday of the month.
R.I.P. Atlanta Thrashers, forever in our hearts. Nick Alifi, Soccer over there. We will be building a change.org petition to get MLS to open it up so you can have 9 DPs on your team. We're going to have it. We're speaking it into existence right now.
30 designated players.
9.
All the DPs.
All of them. All the Euro. It's going to happen. All right, Nick Alifi, Soccer over there. We will see you all next time. Mucha Euro, y'all.
Lotta